In our final session together, we look at hope as something that helps us to fearlessly face the future. Now, the future can be a scary place. What's going to happen? Filled with anxiety. And especially if we find ourselves in a place in life where things are all topsy-turvy, when there's so much uncertainty swirling around, when we find threats and negative things happening from different directions. However, can we face the future? In this week's Bible story from Mark's Gospel, Jesus is caught in the midst of a storm. And yet, his response to the storm is very different from the disciples who are in the very same boat. They go out on the Sea of Galilee, which is a really large lake. Not Lake Superior large, but big, and large enough that it had erratic weather patterns. And you could get caught out in the middle of Lake Galilee, and it could be dangerous. The storms could kick up. In the ancient world, storms and chaos was thought of as one of the primary adversaries in creation. And in fact, in Israel and among its neighbors, when it understood the very act of God's creation, or a God creating, it was to bring order out of chaos. It was to bring some light in the midst of darkness. Storms were common on the waters in the ancient world, and that was seen as something that was destructive, even somewhat evil, personified evil. God would push back the storms. God would calm the storms. And in this story that we have from Mark's Gospel, we see this enacted in the life and the ministry of Jesus. Jesus goes to sleep in the boat, the storm kicks up from nowhere, and the disciples are faced with having to navigate the waters. And even though they are fishers, they are filled with fear. They know just how dangerous life can be. And so they go to Jesus, and fear catapults them from observing the storm, being in the storm, and allowing that storm to just push them to the brink of panic. At the brink of panic, they are convinced that they are perishing. At the brink of panic, they are also convinced that God has somehow left them alone. That Jesus somehow is asleep and uninterested, doesn't care about them and their safety. Lord, why would you let us perish in this storm? That's the language of fear, and it fully takes over. And it turns down, it shuts down the faith of the disciples. Jesus, literally in the very same boat, approaches the storm in a different way, with courage. Courage that is based not in a bravado, not in a sort of macho, I am Superman, here I am, here I roar. No, courage in the place of trusting in God's presence. Jesus trusts that the God who brought order out of chaos at the beginning of creation continues to be active and alive, that God continues to be present. And it is putting trust in that God that gives Jesus the sense of courage. He stands up to the water, and the waves, and in the name of God commands them to be still. Faith finds courage. It fearlessly faces the future when it trusts in God's presence and God's power. What results is peace and shalom. In the midst even of the biggest waves and there is a sense of wholeness. Hope claims that space. And those who have struggled within Christianity over the centuries, facing the most horrible of conditions and situations, have found an inner peace. Have found an inner peace in that deep, deep trust of God. It's that deep trust of God, it's that hoping that places and moves us forward into a place of future. Hope allows us to fearlessly face the future. I want to thank you for joining me in this study. I hope that our time together, that our time of study, that our time of prayer, that our time spent in devotion and faithful conversation has been a source of growth in our lives and has nurtured us to shine a little bit more light on our path. May God bless you as you face the future fearlessly. And until we meet again in another study, may God's Spirit continue to guide, ignite, and shape you in the love and the grace of our Lord Jesus Christ. God bless.